Every one of these songs was on the wrong side of the record. The side the label wasn't promoting. The side the producers thought was the throwaway, the filler, the thing you recorded because you couldn't release a one-sided single.
But you never do.
And then the DJs flipped the record over, or the audience found it anyway, or history decided the label had gotten it exactly backwards. Tonight, 12 of the greatest soul recordings ever made, and the A-side hits they were supposed to support.
It's all right with me.
Number 12, Booker T and the MGs, Green Onions, 1962. The session that produced Green Onions almost didn't happen. On a Sunday in June 1962, Booker T. Jones, Steve Cropper, Louis Steinberg, and Al Jackson Jr. arrived at Stax Records studio on Macklemore Avenue in Memphis to back up an artist named Billy Lee Riley. Riley didn't show. The session was empty. The musicians were already there. The equipment was already set up. They started jamming. Booker T. Jones was 17 years old. He had been playing a piano groove in clubs that he liked, and he tried it on the studio's Hammond M3 organ. Steve Cropper locked in on guitar. Al Jackson held the rhythm down with a drummer's economy. Every note intentional, nothing wasted. The groove settled into something that felt, immediately, like it had always existed. Stewart, Stax's owner and engineer, was in the building. He heard what was happening, walked in, listened, and told them it was good enough to put out as a record. They agreed. They recorded Behave Yourself as the intended A-side, a more conventional organ showcase that Stewart and the musicians believed would be the commercial lead. Stewart told them they needed a B-side. Booker T. Jones later described this moment on NPR in 2009. Jim told us that we needed something to record for a B-side because we couldn't have a one-sided record. And one of the tunes that I'd been playing on piano, we tried on Hammond organ so that the record would have organ on both sides, and that turned out to be Green Onions. The throwaway B-side they recorded, because you can't release a one-sided single, reached number 3 on the Hot 100 and number 1 on the R&B chart. Stax immediately reissued the single with the sides flipped, Green Onions as the A-side, Behave Yourself as the new B-side. The organ groove that Booker T had been playing in clubs, tried on a whim on a Sunday when an artist didn't show up, became one of the most recognized instrumental recordings in the history of soul music. Behave Yourself has been largely forgotten. Number 11, Sam Cooke, A Change Is Gonna Come, 1964. On October 8, 1963, Sam Cooke and his entourage arrived at the Holiday Inn in Shreveport, Louisiana. They had reservations. They were turned away. The motel did not accept black guests. Cooke argued loudly. He and members of his party were arrested downtown for disturbing the peace. He had just watched Bob Dylan release Blowin' in the Wind, a white man from Minnesota writing a civil rights anthem. Cooke's biographer, Peter Gurelnik, wrote that Cooke was so carried away with the message and the fact that a white boy had written it that he was almost ashamed not to have written something like that himself.
A change gonna come, and oh yes it will.
He went home and wrote, "A change is gonna come." He was scared of the song. He felt it was the most politically direct thing he had ever written, and was uncertain whether it would damage the crossover commercial appeal he had spent years building.
Oh, yes it will.
He recorded it and put it on his 1964 album, Ain't That Good News, released in February of that year, but didn't initially release it as a single. When it was eventually released as a single in December 1964, it was placed on the B-side of Shake, a decision reflecting the label's and Cooke's own uncertainty about how overtly political his music should be.
And I go to my brother.
A Change Is Gonna Come was released on December 22, 1964. Sam Cooke had been shot dead 11 days earlier, on December 11th, at a motel in Los Angeles.
Let me just say this.
The civil rights movement picked up the song almost immediately. It became the anthem of a generation, passed from the B-side of a posthumous single into the permanent cultural record. Rolling Stone has ranked it the 12th greatest song in the history of American popular music. It has been in the Library of Congress National Recording Registry since 2007. The A-side, Shake, peaked at number 7 on the Hot 100. Most people have never heard it. The B-side has never stopped playing.
A change gonna come. Oh, yes it will.
Number 10, Otis Redding, Respect, 1965. In 1965, Otis Redding was 23 years old and had been recording for Stax Records for 3 years. He was developing the sound that would make him the most important live performer in soul music. Raw, urgent, physically committed in a way that the more polished Motown productions of the same era weren't. But he had not yet had the commercial breakthrough that would make his name universally known. He wrote Respect as a song about a man asking for his due, asking his partner to acknowledge his worth, his presence, the fact that he worked and provided and deserved recognition for it.
You can do me wrong, honey, if you want it.
He recorded it at Stax with the MGs as his backing band, produced by Steve Cropper. The song was placed as the B-side on its original release, behind Ole Man Trouble. It reached number 35 on the Hot 100, a modest showing that placed it solidly in the catalog without breaking through to the commercial heights Redding was building toward. 2 years later, on Valentine's Day 1967, Aretha Franklin sat down at a piano in the Atlantic Record Studio in New York and recorded her version. She rearranged the song from the ground up, changed the gender perspective, added the now iconic R-E-S-P-E-C-T spelling, brought in her sisters for the backing vocals that turned the breakdown into something collective and defiant, rather than individual and pleading. When Otis Redding heard Aretha's version, he said, "I just lost my song. That girl took it away from me." He was right. His Respect is an extraordinary piece of mid-1960s soul. Her Respect became an anthem for civil rights, for women's liberation, for every group in America that had been told to wait. The B-side of a 1965 Stax single became the soundtrack of an era. If you're locked into this one, most people scrolling past these songs have no idea what it took to make them. We digs that history back up, one record at a time. The subscribe button costs nothing, and it means you won't miss the next one. Number 9, Aretha Franklin, Dr. Feelgood, Love is a Serious Business, 1967.
Would you believe I'll get up, put on some clothes?
Here is the single most consequential pairing in soul music history, Respect by Aretha Franklin, the song that Rolling Stone has ranked as one of the 5 greatest recordings in the history of American popular music.
It's all right with me.
The song that became the anthem of civil rights and women's liberation simultaneously. The song that proved Aretha Franklin was the greatest soul vocalist alive. That song was the A-side. And on the back of it, as the B-side, was Dr. Feelgood, Love is a Serious Business. Dr. Feelgood is a slow, grinding, gospel-rooted blues.
And me and that man, can you understand me, girls?
Aretha at the piano in the specific mode that connects directly to the church, playing with the kind of raw authority that reminds everyone in the room that this woman's instrument is not just her voice, but her whole body and her whole history. It is one of the most powerfully sexual recordings in the history of soul music. And it is entirely unself-conscious about that. matter-of-fact in the way that only genuine confidence produces. It was recorded during the same historic Atlantic record sessions at Fame Studios in Muscle Shoals, Alabama, in January 1967.
Because company.
The sessions where Aretha Franklin became the version of Aretha Franklin that history knows. Jerry Wexler, who produced those sessions, described Dr. Feelgood as one of the most extraordinary performances he had ever witnessed.
Filling me up with all of those pills.
She performed it at the piano herself, playing and singing simultaneously, and what came out of the studio was a performance so complete and so personal that it required almost no production intervention. As the B-side to Respect, Dr. Feelgood has been heard by fewer people than its A-side counterpart. And yet, as a pure document of what the greatest female soul singer in history could do when she sat down at a piano and simply played, it may be the single most instructive recording she ever made.
No doctor.
Number 8. James Brown, There Was a Time, 1968. James Brown's relationship with the B-side is complicated because James Brown recorded so much material for King Records that the conventional A-side B-side hierarchy barely applies to his output in the normal sense. But There Was a Time, placed as the B-side to I Can't Stand Myself When You Touch Me in late 1967, represents something specific and important. The moment James Brown's funk reached its most purely joyful expression, There Was a Time, is built around Brown reciting a history of Black American dance. The jerk, the mashed potato, the boogaloo, the cold sweat, the James Brown with his band locked into a groove that starts tight and gets progressively more explosive as the song builds. It is a celebration, a declaration that Black American popular culture had created not just a music, but a physical language, and that the man performing it was both its historian and its most committed practitioner. The song was recorded at King Studios in Cincinnati in October 1967, with a band that had been road-tested to the point of absolute precision, every member knowing exactly where Brown was going and exactly what their role was in getting him there. The groove that There Was a Time establishes is the foundation of everything James Brown would do in the decade that followed, the prototype for the funk that defined the 1970s. It became the centerpiece of Brown's live performances for years. The moment in the show when the tightly choreographed precision opened up into pure celebration, when the audience and the band and the performer all occupied the same space simultaneously. As a B-side on its original release, it was an afterthought. As a live performance document, as the recording that most purely captures what James Brown was doing to American music in 1968, it is irreplaceable. Number 7. Gladys Knight and the Pips, I Heard It Through the Grapevine, 1967. The story of I Heard It Through the Grapevine at Motown is one of the most instructive examples of a label's promotional machinery getting a song almost entirely wrong, twice, before the recording finally connected. Written by Norman Whitfield and Barrett Strong in 1966, the song was first recorded by Smokey Robinson and the Miracles and rejected by Berry Gordy. It was then recorded by Marvin Gaye in 1967, and Berry Gordy rejected that version too, calling it too rough, too unconventional, too unlike the polished Motown sound he was building. That version sat in the vault. It was eventually released in 1968 and went to number 1 on the Hot 100 and number 1 on the R&B chart for 7 consecutive weeks, becoming one of the best-selling singles in Motown's history. But before any of that, Gladys Knight and the Pips recorded their version and released it. In 1967, it reached number 2 on the pop chart and number 1 on the R&B chart. It was a massive commercial success, and Berry Gordy, seeing what the song was capable of commercially, went back to Marvin Gaye's shelved recording and finally let it out. Gladys Knight's Grapevine is a different animal from Marvin's. It is more urgent, more immediately soul-rooted, Gladys's voice cracking with the specific quality of someone who cannot contain the emotion the song requires. The Pips' woo-woo backing vocal figure that runs through the track gives it a communal texture, the whole family carrying the bad news together. Her version was number 1. His version was number 1. The label had rejected the song 3 separate times before it became Motown's biggest-selling single of the decade. Number 6, Ann Peebles, I Can't Stand the Rain, 1973. Bringing back sweet memories. Ann Peebles wrote I Can't Stand the Rain in 15 minutes. She has said this in interviews. She was in a hotel room, it was raining, and the sound of the rain on the window, the particular, specific percussion of raindrops on glass, gave her the core musical idea that the song is built around. She co-wrote it with Don Bryant and Bernie Miller, called The Studio, and recorded it almost immediately. The production that Willie Mitchell brought to I Can't Stand the Rain at High Records in Memphis is among the most precise and economical pieces of recording work in the history of soul music. The core sonic element, a synthesized dripping sound that perfectly replicates the rain Peebles heard on the hotel window, was created using an Optigan, a primitive consumer keyboard instrument modified by Willie Mitchell's brother James to produce that specific tone. They built the entire record around an Optigan sample. And it became one of the most recognizable sounds in soul music history. On its initial release in 1973, I Can't Stand the Rain was the B-side to I've Been There Before. It reached number 6 on the R&B chart, a solid performance that established it commercially without fully revealing how important the recording was. The northern soul scene in Britain recognized it almost immediately. It became a club staple in the Wigan casino circuit, played at the all-nighters where working-class British teenagers who were passionate about American soul sought out recordings the mainstream had overlooked. Since 1973, I Can't Stand the Rain has been sampled or interpolated in over 100 recordings across 5 decades by artists from Missy Elliott to Supertramp, from disco producers to hip-hop beatmakers. The B-side that reached number 6 R&B is now one of the most influential recordings in the history of the genre. Number 5, The Impressions, People Get Ready, 1965. Curtis Mayfield wrote, People Get Ready at a moment of genuine spiritual crisis, the height of the civil rights movement, the year after the Civil Rights Act, when the formal legislative progress of 1964 sat in uncomfortable tension with the daily realities of Black American life that no piece of legislation had been able to touch. He was 22 years old. The song is a train metaphor, the soul train, the freedom train, the vehicle of collective Black spiritual progress that requires no ticket beyond faith and the absence of hope-killing baggage. It borrows its imagery from the gospel tradition and its emotional architecture from the Black church, the specific combination of sorrow and certainty that characterizes the most powerful African-American sacred music. It was arranged as a gospel record by Johnny Pate. And when you can feel it deep down in your heart, you don't have to worry about it. And recorded by the Impressions in a single session that captured something Mayfield had been carrying for months. The Impressions label, ABC Paramount, placed People Get Ready as the B-side to Woman's Got Soul on the March 1965 single. Woman's Got Soul climbed to number 1 on the R&B chart. People Get Ready climbed to number 14, a significant chart showing for a B-side and a measure of how urgently audiences sought it out once they found it on the flip.
Oh, no, no.
Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductees who have cited People Get Ready as an influence or covered it include Rod Stewart, who turned it into a multi-million selling recording with Jeff Beck and Bob Marley. Rolling Stone has ranked it as one of the 500 greatest songs in the history of American popular music. The B-side of a 1965 soul single is now recognized as one of the most spiritually important recordings in 20th century American music. Woman's Got Soul remains largely in the Impressions' deep catalog.
You don't need no ticket.
Number 4. Wilson Pickett, In the Midnight Hour, 1965. Wilson Pickett and Steve Cropper wrote In the Midnight Hour together in a Memphis hotel room on the night before the recording session. This is documented. Pickett arrived at Stax Records in Memphis in May 1965, sent there by Atlantic Records producer Jerry Wexler, who understood that the combination of Pickett's raw, shouting vocal style and the Stax house band's rolling groove could produce something that neither party could achieve on their own. They checked into a hotel. They talked about the song all night. Cropper, who had written Knock on Wood with Eddie Floyd and co-written dozens of other Stax classics, understood the specific kind of groove Pickett needed, something that built rather than settled, something that pushed rather than floated. The midnight hour as the moment of maximum intensity, maximum desire, maximum presence. They had the song by morning. At the session, Jerry Wexler physically demonstrated the rhythm he wanted, doing what he called the jerk, the specific dance move that was circulating through Black American popular culture at the time, showing the musicians where the beat wanted to land. Al Jackson, the Stax drummer, watched Wexler dance and locked the rhythm in. On its original Atlantic release, In the Midnight Hour was the B-side to I'm Not Tired. Radio immediately flipped the record. In the Midnight Hour reached number 1 on the R&B chart and number 21 on the Hot 100. It became the definitive Wilson Pickett recording, the song that established his commercial and artistic identity for the rest of his career. I'm Not Tired is heard today primarily as the other song on the In the Midnight Hour single. Number 3. Al Green, Let's Stay Together, 1971. Al Green arrived at High Records in Memphis in 1969 with a gospel voice that he had been suppressing in favor of conventional soul material, and a producer in Willie Mitchell who recognized immediately that the specific quality in Green's voice, the way it shifted between its chest register and its head voice with an ease that made the transition sound like a single continuous instrument, was something that had to be allowed to do exactly what it naturally wanted to do. Mitchell built the High Record sound around Green's voice through a series of recordings that became progressively more intimate and more extraordinary. By 1971, they were making records that operated in a musical space no one else had quite discovered. Slow, close, produced with a precision that sounded effortless, built for late-night listening at a volume just loud enough to feel. Let's Stay Together was recorded in 1971 and placed as the B-side to Tomorrow's Dream on its High Record single. Radio immediately played the wrong side. Let's Stay Together went to number 1 on both the Billboard Hot 100 and the R&B charts simultaneously, becoming the biggest commercial success in Al Green's career and one of the defining recordings of the decade. It spent 3 weeks at number 1. It is regularly cited as one of the greatest soul ballads in the history of the genre. Al Green has described the recording session as one that happened almost accidentally, as if the song knew what it was before anyone else did. Willie Mitchell's production, the rhythm guitar pattern, the string arrangement, the way the horns arrive exactly when the song needs them, is a masterclass in knowing what to leave out. The B-side to Tomorrow's Dream is now considered one of the greatest recordings in the history of soul music.
Put you, baby, big around you.
Number 2. Marvin Gaye, What's Going On, 1971. The technical A-side, B-side classification for What's Going On is this. When Motown finally released it as a single in January 1971, the B-side was God Is Love. But the more important and more dramatic story is the months before that release, because Berry Gordy did not want to release What's Going On at all. Marvin Gaye had recorded the song in June 1970, inspired by a conversation with his brother Frankie, who had returned from Vietnam, describing the war's devastation. The song was unlike anything Motown had released. Languid, orchestrated, politically direct, with jazz-inflected saxophone, and Gaye's voice layered over itself in a way that created a communal texture.
With brutality, talk to me, talk to me, talk to me.
Gordy listened to it and reportedly told Gaye it was the worst thing I ever heard. Gaye responded with one of the most consequential ultimatums in the history of popular music. He refused to record anything else for Motown unless Gordy released What's Going On. Gordy released it. It went to number 1 on the R&B chart and number 2 on the Hot 100. Gordy then called Gaye and apologized, something that virtually never happened in the Gordy management model. Rolling Stone has ranked the resulting album, also called What's Going On, as the greatest album ever made. The single itself is ranked among the greatest individual recordings in the history of American music. A label owner, who called it the worst thing he'd ever heard, was eventually forced to acknowledge that it might be the best. Number 1. Don Covey, Mercy Mercy, 1964. Don Covey recorded Mercy Mercy in 1964 with a then unknown guitarist named James Marshall Hendrix. Before Hendrix was Jimi Hendrix, before the experience, before the feedback and the fire. Hendrix co-wrote the song and played on the recording. The track has a specific propulsive energy that distinguishes it from the smooth soul mainstream of 1964. A rawer, more insistent guitar tone that sounds, in retrospect, like a preview of what Hendrix would do to amplified sound within a few years. Mercy Mercy reached number 35 on the Hot 100. It was a modest commercial success that never fully broke through, but it connected with the Rolling Stones, who heard it and incorporated its energy into their own work. Mick Jagger and Keith Richards later cited Covey as one of their primary influences. Richards said he showed them that you could be raw and melodic at the same time. What makes Mercy Mercy the definition of a deserved A-side is the specific historical accident of its circumstances. An important song by an under-recognized artist featuring an as-yet unknown guitarist who would become one of the defining musical figures of the 20th century. All of it combined in a recording that barely made the top 40 and then largely disappeared, only to be rediscovered by collectors who recognized what it represented.
That's right. Have mercy, please.
The Rolling Stones covered Mercy Mercy for their 1965 Out of Our Heads album. Their version reached audiences Covey's original never did. The song that introduced Jimi Hendrix's guitar to a recording studio became famous through other people's performances rather than its own.
Jobs, 7 days a week. I bring my money home to